hurriedly signed into law by the president. We've not spoken with you, so we'd like to get your broad opinion, to issues around the Electoral Act 2026 as signed into law by our president. What are the high points to you? What are the upside and the downsides if you have studied it, broadly? Let us understand your views about, well, is it going to help us, or how is it going to help us in one way or the other?
Well, thank you very much. Broadly speaking, I have always been against this whole idea of electoral reforms. Every cycle of elections we do electoral reforms because we don't need them. We don't need them. And it's very clear. It is manifesting now. What we need to even checkmate more is the judicial process. It's our judges. Because in the last elections, if you recollect, the INEC chairman clearly stated that based on the Electoral Act, INEC made regulations and guidelines. Commonsensically, and even in law, when regulations and guidelines are made based on powers conferred by law, those regulations and guidelines become law. But the Supreme Court, the Nigerian Supreme Court, surprisingly ruled that INEC was not bound by those guidelines and regulations it made. And that was what threw the last elections to the winds. So the electoral process, we keep on regurgitating the same facts, electronic transmission, this and blah, blah, blah. And to what extent? The voters at the polling units should be able to know exactly what votes were cast. And within a couple of minutes, political parties should know their results and then be aware whether there is any hanky-panky playing out. But with regards to this, what was signed hurriedly by Mr. Bola Tinubu, we don't have any.
You've got a great idea. GoDaddy has the perfect domain name to go with it.
Last elections, Nigerians thought, okay, maybe they will do some good, they will do well, but now it is very, very clear that these guys mean no good. And I'll give you specific examples. In Section 75, for instance, they said that for a political party to be registered, you must pay 15 million naira to register as a political party. That is insanity. I mean, where does that, what brings up such? You have INEC staff who are already paid, who are just to bet that the particulars brought by a political party are truthful, and you now say the political parties have to pay 50 million naira to be registered. How much did the PDP, APC, and all these ones pay? Zero or near zero. So you want to make the electoral process, you want to keep more people away from the election circles. This issue, secondly, the issue of electronic transmission, 60 subsection 3 of the Electoral Act, of the new Electoral Act. In the INEC chairman, Mahmoud Yakub, had stated that the IREV is so configured that the moment you impute the results, even if there is no network in the vicinity, the moment you arrive at a place where there is network, what you imputed will automatically be transmitted to the database. Just like when you send a text message from a location where there is no network. When you arrive at the place where there is no where there is network, the message by itself goes and has the time when you sent it. So there is actually no need to make all this noise about electronic transmission. Once you're using the same IREV and you're using the same materials that were provided. So this, to me, this whole hullabaloo about Electoral Act is just to distract Nigerians. But let Nigerians become very conscious of the fact that these guys are out to force their way through. And the issue is what Nigerians now do to safeguard the process. And what I suggest Nigerians should do, irrespective of the various sections which were smuggled in or smuggled out, when votes are cast, know the number of votes you scored or your party scored in a particular unit, transmit to the nearest, maybe the collation officer, so that within minutes of the end of polling, the votes are known. And Nigerians must come out firmly to stand behind those votes, irrespective of what is thrown against us. Because certainly they will bring in the security agencies, but we should not be bothered about them. We should forge ahead. That is the way I look at this process. And I don't believe in specifics, because the specifics are not even meant for us. The specifics are not meant for the betterment of Nigeria. The specifics are just to the track. Let me give you one more issue, one more section. Section 84, that talks of the means of primary elections. How will it be conducted?
Okay.
Come on. Maybe very soon the Electoral Act will tell us how politicians will be sleeping with themselves or making friends. You focus so much on things that are unnecessary, and you give loopholes for this same judiciary. Like during the last elections, the Electoral Act was very clear. Members can challenge primary elections. But in the Supreme Court now said, okay, since there were issues with primary elections of some two parties, a non-member cannot challenge it. So the whole idea is this: election is about voting and the votes counting, voting and votes counting. We saw the charade that went through, that Mr. Benjamin Kalou, the Deputy Speaker of the House, how he messed up Nigerians, because what transpired on that. The world saw what we pretend as democracy. When 10, 15 sections get approved at the same time, with most of them contained of smuggled portions that even the members had not seen before, and you call that a democracy? Nigerians have to waken up. We cannot lie on our oars and say it was it's as business as before.
Okay.
Right. And let me talk about the civil society.
All right.
You see, we always mistake the civil society fund driven. The United States has cut off their funds, so most of the funds for these civil society groups come from the European Union. Okay. And guess who are the mainstays of the European Union? France and United Kingdom. If you listen to the civil society and their press release, the end of it, despite acknowledging so many irregularities, they said the process will be imperfect, but we have to work with what we have. And that is the language Nigerians must not tolerate. We do not have to stomach irregularities. We do not have to stomach criminals ruling over us. If they thwart the electoral process, if the votes that are counted at your polling units don't tally with what is announced, Nigerians should come out on the streets and insist that their votes count. That is how it is done in other democracies. That is what makes it a democracy, and not the language of the civil society, because they cannot go against their funders. They cannot go against France, which is in bed with Mr. Tinubu. We have to realize all this and get ready for the next election. Thank you very much,
Barrister Eze Iluche. We're just having a conversation earlier, just before the show started. We were talking about the staying power of Nigerians. You're saying that don't stomach irregularities, come out and push back. But some Nigerians are of the opinion that, look, they will do what they will do regardless. So no matter how much you push back, Nigerians are people that don't want to stress themselves. Let me put it lightly. Nigerians usually don't want to stress themselves. But, well, anyway, I'll come back to you and then we'll talk about that if time allows us. But let's bring in Chief Asim Adams.
These people don't stress themselves. We have been cowed. But Nigerians have realized that even when they say they won't stress themselves, they end up dying in the process. Do you know how many people have died in the course of the past 2.5 years who didn't want to stress themselves? Now they are dead and buried. So it is time to stress yourself and ensure that your votes get counted. Otherwise, many of us will be dead and buried. In fact, by the time they come into power next time, the tax act that is a bomb waiting to criminalize over 99% of Nigerians will be unfolded and us. Then we'll be dead and buried. So we ourselves and make sure that the votes get counted. Thank you very much.